Evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Common Council meeting. Seeing everybody is checked in, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Item C, public comment. At this time, the mayor will recognize members of the public who have indicated their desire to address the council. Upon recognition by the mayor, persons may address the council. First stating their name and address, the council may take action on emergency matters introduced by members of the public. Anyone from the public wish to address the council? Final call, anyone from the public? Seeing no one, we will go on to item D. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of July 14th, 2020 Common Council meeting? A motion by Mr. Butke, a second by Mr. Fire. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. That motion carries 10-0. Item E, staff updates. Employee introduction of Emmett Simkowski by Josh.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. It is my pleasure to introduce Emmett Simkowski. He is our new associate planner with the city, with our Development Services Department. He deals with zoning, code enforcement, and planning for us. He comes to us from Winnebago County, where he was a code enforcement officer. He's originally from Stevens Point, so to get him back into central Wisconsin is a real get for us. And we're excited to have him here and starting with our department. He started on July 16th, so he's been with us almost 2 weeks now. So introducing Emmett.
Welcome, Emmett. Item number 2, update on the COVID-19 response by Steve Barg, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, it was about 60 days ago that I was in front of you putting forth a plan for discussion on possible reopening of our facilities. You know what happened after that? The council voted to reopen most of our operations as of June 1st. Ultimately, we did not open EFCO Pool. We went into the mode that we're in right now, which is trying to construct a new aquatic center, and that's exciting. We're hoping to have that ready to go for June 2021 for the new season. Since that time, we haven't talked a whole lot about it. I maybe have given a couple of updates, maybe briefly. I don't know if my weekly emails to the council have addressed that. But just to kind of tell you what's happened since then, the staff, the department and division heads, the staff leaders have a regular call every Wednesday morning. And the first item of business every Wednesday morning when we get on Zoom is COVID. We talk about the updates that departments are having. What are they experiencing? What are the concerns that they're encountering? Jen oftentimes is able to give information and answer questions about some of the human resources issues, about maybe an employee who perhaps was exposed or believes they may have been exposed to COVID-19. How do we handle it? So there's some of those kind of questions. We also talk about some of the safety issues that have come as a result of that. So those are good dialogues, and we continue to have those every Wednesday morning. Ron Ullman has kind of taken the lead at this point with the opportunity we have for reimbursement of some of our costs. It began with FEMA, first of all, but now there's a program called CARES that has a significant amount of money, possibly as much as $300,000 or so, available to the city. I don't expect us to qualify to be able to get that much reimbursement, but it's offered us the ability to get reimbursed for costs we've already incurred that are COVID-19 related. Plus, since it goes through November, we can look forward and say, is there a piece of equipment we need to buy? Are there some supplies we need to acquire? More personal protective equipment? Now would be the time, with the possible resurgence of additional cases coming forward, for us to be able to acquire those types of items and be able to reimburse ourselves through the grant. So that's something that Ron will be working on with staff leaders in the next couple of months as we put together our package to send off for reimbursement. What I understand from the department heads is that the facilities are really going pretty well. I'm not saying there haven't been challenges. I know Jill Porter could tell you that there are periodically things at the library, maybe a patron isn't happy about something or whatever, but things have gone pretty well there. They've gone pretty well in this facility as well, with people at City Hall observing some of the rules that we have for social distancing and whatnot. We're now going into the elections time period for the next 2 weeks, where the room that you're in right now is being used for absentee voting. That went very well in the spring, thanks to great work by the clerk's office and some other people helping, and of course the help from the street division. Chris Hawley and his crew put together the plexiglass barriers that keep our staff and the customers safe during the voting process. Right now, I've charged the department and division heads with continuing to monitor their facilities, and as we see what comes from Madison and from Wood County in terms of additional cases, more guidance being given our way, we need to be able to adapt. We need to be able to respond. There has been a spike in cases in the last couple of weeks or so in the Wood County area, not drastic, but we're seeing more activity. And so even here at City Hall, I've commissioned a group of people that will be meeting starting on Friday, having meetings to make recommendations to me as to what they think we ought to be doing to protect ourselves and the citizens. Do we need to look at a mask requirement at some point? Do we need to look at other barriers or other types of restrictions that might keep us all safe? And right now, we're not proposing anything, but I look forward to their input as we go along in the days and weeks ahead. So I think we're on top of it as best we can be. We've got great leaders here, many of them in this room who are responsible for their facilities and their staff. And I think we're doing as much as we can to protect not only our staff, but again, the citizens of our community. I would also like to mention that the mayor is doing Facebook information, and he's putting it out there, getting a lot of good response, a lot of good hits, if you will, on the public service announcements that he provides as updates to the community. And along with that, we still have the community leaders, about 20 of us or so, meeting every week on Thursdays to talk about how we can communicate and work with all the other players, the school district, the YMCA, the high school, the Columbus Catholic, all the community players, the Main Street and Mackey, so that we're in sync, we're talking together, we're working together, and we're aware of what each other is doing. And that's good for the community-wide leadership that people expect of us. So I would say that that's my report for right now. I take any questions that anybody might have about where we stand with COVID-19.
Any questions for Steve? No?
Okay, with that in mind, I'd like to ask Dan to come up. He's got an item for staff updates as well.
Thank you, Steve. I just wanted to give a quick update on the city garage space needs study that's going on right now, being wrapping up as we speak. We do intend that our consultant will be at our next meeting on August 11th, present the results of that study, as well as several alternatives for future consideration by the council. But prior to that meeting on the 11th, staff would like to offer a tour of the existing facilities to the Common Council and to the mayor, so you can get a fresh look at the conditions over there. And so when we get through the discussion on the 11th, it might be more meaningful to you with a fresh idea of what the street division looks like. So even if you've been there before, we'd encourage you to take advantage of a tour with us that we can show you some of the things that we're dealing with over there. So we'd like to offer a couple different times for that tour. On Friday, the 7th of August, that morning, for those of you who are available during the day. And then Monday, August 10th in the early evening, for those of you who are not available during the day. And if one of those two times doesn't work, we can certainly arrange another time. But I'll be sending out an email tomorrow morning looking for your preference and hopefully encouraging you to participate in one of our tours in the next few weeks. And then we'll look forward to the presentation by our consultant on August 11th. Thank you.
Thank you. Item F, Mayor's comments and employee recognition. Anthony Lucchini from the Fire Department, August 10th, 2015, 5 years. And just very briefly, this week we had to call the Plan Commission on a very quick meeting. We had our normal one last Tuesday, and there was something came up to where they had to come back in Monday. And I think this just brings us back to where I believe we are so thankful for all this, the committees and the commission members and everything that all the volunteers do to make the city run. It is so important. So I just like to say to all the people on the committees and that help out, thank you very, very much for what you do. Item G, council comments. Any comments from the council? Mr. Bargender.
Thank you, Mayor. I received a letter from the Pitsley family at 500 West 6th Street, and I believe the majority of the council also did. I just wanted to read this letter so they could be publicly heard. Dated 7/14/2020. Mr. Bargender, our family would like to take this opportunity to express our concern regarding the possible mandating of face masks within our community. Our stand is against the mandatory mandating of face masks. We instead are in favor of local businesses making that decision individually. The mandating of face mask is an outreach of government. Thank you. Signed, Melissa Pitsley, Kevin Pitsley, and Leo Pitsley. That is all.
Thank you. Any other comments from the council? All right, seeing none, we'll go on to item H. Any reports from commissions, boards, or committees? Any reports? Seeing none, we'll go on. Just before the consent agenda, Josh, if you could read the minutes from the Special City Plan Commission meeting that took place yesterday.
Thank you, Mayor. Special City Plan Commission meeting of July 27th, 2020. Those present would be Mayor Bob McManus, Kathy Banks, John Caprillion, Steve Okonek, Alderperson Quentin Rosendich, Ken Wood, and Bill Pinker. Others that were present were myself, Development Services Director, Steve Barg, City Administrator, and Tom Turchi, City Engineer. Chairman McManus called the meeting to order at 5 p.m. in the City Hall Common Council chambers. Citizens' comments included Adam Panoff of 109 East Harrison Street, said he was wondering if the parking lot lights would be shut off each night when the Taco John's closes. He asked if the menu board could be turned face to the south. He also asked if the fence along East Harrison Street could be approved up to 6 feet. He suggests using MLV, mass-loaded vinyl, to reduce noise. He also asked if a 15-foot setback from the alley could be reduced and include a fence. Brian Summers of 811 North Maple Avenue said he was encouraged that the new buyer was willing to work with us. His preference is Plan B. He is looking for a fence along Maple Avenue. That is what he and his wife would support. He asked if the fence could be 6 feet tall and if there was some way to stipulate the hours of operation for the drive-through. Tom Urbanek, 900 North Maple Avenue, said he would support Plan B with a full fence. He is after anything that can buffer the order board for him, something to make it less commercial and maybe add landscaping on the outside of the fence. Anything that could be done in the boulevard would be a nice benefit as well. He would like to limit advertising on the outside of the fence. PC 20-36, Rosendich moved and Pinker seconded a motion to approve conditional use request by Marshfield Land Company, LLC, on behalf of Leland and Vicky Albrecht for in-vehicle sales, drive-through land use, and off-site parking land use with exceptions to the landscape and fencing requirements as presented, located at 112 East Harrison Street, parcel number 33-02032. Zoned UMU urban mixed use with the following conditions exceptions. Site plan B is approved as presented. Minor changes to the site plan may be administratively approved as long as the changes do not result in the development becoming non-compliant with this conditional use permit and or other code requirements. A final landscape plan meeting the requirements of the code, the number of points shall be submitted and administratively approved prior to installation of the landscaping with the following exceptions. The landscape buffer yard may be reduced to 3 feet wide along the south property line. Landscape islands and peninsulas may be less than 3 feet in width. A final lighting and photometric plan shall be submitted and administratively approved prior to the issuance of a building permit for the lighting. A privacy fence up to 6 feet tall may be placed along Harrison Street and Maple Avenue up to the right-of-way, provided it does not encroach into the vision triangle. Applicant shall work with the city and neighbors to mitigate noise issues that may arise from the menu board. Project shall be completed within 24 months of approval of the conditional use permit. Hours of operation shall be limited to 7 a.m. until 11 p.m. Property owner shall be required to haul away the snow if snow piles take up more than 2 parking stalls, and parking lot lighting shall be off by midnight. Motion carried. Discussion. Banks asked for clarification on the pros and cons to having access on Maple Avenue. Applicant Cressman stated that it was better for traffic flow and would be fewer conflicts with only one drive-through lane. Headlights will likely shine on somebody's house. He also thinks landscaping on the outside of the fence would make some sense. Rosendich asked about restricting traffic in the alley. Caprillion asked if traffic can come out onto Central Avenue. Leland Albrecht stated vehicles in the parking lot can drive back out onto Central Avenue and even into the alley. Okonek asked about referring this to the Board of Public Works to review the alley traffic to see if it should be made a one-way. Turchi said that there has been no accidents in the past 5 years there and would not recommend a change. Caprillion asked about how wide the exit driveway would be on option A, and where the vehicle lights would shine. Miller stated it would be 12 feet wide and primarily shine towards the garage across the street unless vehicles turn. Staff updates. Miller stated Jeremy Faber is requesting an extension for his group development on Man Street. With no further business before the commission, Rosendich moved and Okonek seconded to adjourn the meeting at 5:33 p.m.
Thank you. With that, Mr. Fisher?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would actually just like to pull from the consent agenda letter Q, which is the City Planning Commission special meeting.
Okay. So Josh, thank you very much. With that, is there a motion to receive and place on file approving all recommended actions in the consent agenda? And Mr. Fisher, I do hear what you would like. Motion by Mr. Bucky, a second by Mr. Peschel. And Mr. Fisher would like to pull item number Q from the City Plan Commission special meeting. Any others? Seeing no others, then no further discussion, please vote. That motion carries 10-0. And we'll go to item Q, City Plan Commission, July 27th meeting. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. I just have one hopefully simple question, but just curious as to why there was a special meeting and why it's coming before us the very next day. If someone could just maybe walk me through the protocol of how this happened, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, in the original Plan Commission meeting, which was held on July 21st last week, they had presented one plan, and the neighbors had some concerns, and they had asked for some changes to be made. The applicant had suggested that he could turn that around quickly, and time was kind of the essence for them to get their sale of the property so they could continue on with creating the drive-through and acquiring the Taco John's property and then putting the drive-through in. So if he would have pushed it back to the August meeting, he'd have lost a month of time to do that, and he's obligated to complete that by winter. So it's really more of a function to he was able to turn the plans around, work with the neighbors, and get plans that actually the neighbors were more supportive of in the final iteration. So the Plan Commission was agreeable to and willing to call a special meeting in order to review the application. So that's really the gist of it.
Thank you, Mr. Witzel.
Thank you. I have several questions regarding this. Most of them had to do with safety. Looking at the plans, it's talking about a 4'6" high fence on the, I guess would you refer to as the north side, and 4'6" high fence on the plans on the short 66-foot, I guess would be east side there. I'm assuming that the south-ish facing fence would be 6 foot. According to the motion, it was approved up to 6 foot. I guess I have some concerns. You're putting in a 6 foot, I'm assuming a 6 foot blind fence as per the request of the neighbors, which I understand, but you're essentially fencing off 3 sides of a very long property. The property is 157 feet. You're fencing off 3 sides, and I guess there's several concerns that come to mind. Concerns of after hours gatherings where law enforcement can't necessarily see what's happening in the back behind a 6 foot fence. Concerns with, again, a 157 foot property with no emergency vehicle access. So if something happens in this drive-through, how in the world do you get an ambulance or some other such vehicle in there to take care of those issues? And you have a sidewalk, if I'm correct, along that north side, and you're putting in a 6 foot blind fence along there. And I guess there's some concerns there because if I'm correct, that would be against ordinance, an ordinance about having a fence that can be seen through and it's short. So if those safety concerns could be addressed, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, and I can address those. There would be a gap in the fence for the vision triangles. So there'd be a 10 to 15 foot gap before the alley, so people coming out of the alley would be able to see around the fence, which is required by code. There'd also be a 30-foot vision triangle at the intersection of Harrison and Maple, so they'd be able to see as they're approaching Maple Avenue or Harrison Street. The code does allow the Plan Commission to grant exceptions into that setback, so they have that flexibility as part of the code. The fence would be primarily 6 feet, but I think the final discussion was there could be some, it doesn't have to be exactly 6 feet all around, but primarily and that was really what the neighbors had requested and desired in all of their statements. So that was trying to accommodate the neighborhood. As far as emergency services, we did talk to the fire department, and they said they wouldn't be driving an apparatus back in there anyways. They would be able to address anything from the street or alley, so they wouldn't be stuck turning around in there. The offsite parking is going to be primarily for staff, and so it's going to be the customers would be for the drive-through would be primarily the customers for the customer business. And as far as the site obscuring or privacy fence would be allowed in the street side yard, which would be along Harrison. Typically it'd be a 3 foot. The exception for the privacy fence that was given was really along Maple Avenue. And that can be pushed back closer to the parking so there could be landscape in front of it. And I think even the applicant was supportive of doing something like that as the neighbors were. So it's a tight site. If we had the room, there'd probably be more setbacks or more spacing. But I think overall, we tried to address the safety concerns and the neighbors' concerns as much as we could.
Okay, so does law enforcement have any concern with gatherings in that back section of that lot behind a 6-foot fence? Because even with vision triangles that allow for traffic visual, it doesn't mean that there isn't going to necessarily be gatherings of young people in the back. I don't know if law enforcement has any concerns regarding that.
I don't know if Chief Grams has even seen it, but we haven't talked to him about it, I guess. That didn't come up during the...
Okay. Anything further? Seeing nothing, then is there a motion to approve the minutes of the special city plan commission meeting? Motion by Mr. Rosendich, second by Mr. Wagner. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote. Motion carries 10-0. Item K, presentation of the Historic Preservation Stewardship Award, presented by Vicki Schnitzler, chairperson of the Marshfield Historic Preservation Committee.
Thank you, Mayor.
Vicki, just one second. If you are watching this virtually, if you can mute your phone, we're getting some feedback and some words. So if you could do that, we certainly would appreciate it. I'm very sorry.
Thank you, Mayor McManus and the council members for your time this evening. I am Vicki Schnitzler, the chairperson for the City of Marshfield Historic Preservation Committee. The Marshfield Stewardship Award, which we are giving tonight, the program began back in 2007. The purposes of the program are to educate the public on the community's historic resources and to promote an awareness and a support for historic preservation within the community. A goal of the program is to encourage rehabilitation and maintenance of historic structures and to influence community norms regarding the proper care and maintenance of historic resources. This year's award is being presented to St. John's the Baptist Church of 201 West Blodgett Street and Reverend James Weiner, Reverend Sam Martin, Sister Rita, and Sister Barbara for their work on the Mother Frances Stridle Center located in the basement of St. John's the Baptist Church. During the tenure of Father Sam Martin, the basement area under the north side of the church was rehabilitated to provide a classroom for religious education and a chapel for 24-hour Eucharistic adoration. The entire area is called the Mother Frances Stridle Center, and the chapel is called the St. John Paul II Adoration Chapel. Within the project area was correction of water issues in the basement, repair to the original foundation, and construction of new spaces. All of the work complemented the structural features of the church. In addition, 3 windows from the Sisters' Chapel that was a part of St. Joseph's Hospital and the statue of St. Gerard that had formerly been in St. Joseph's Hospital are incorporated into the project. One additional historic component was adding the communion rail used by the school sisters of Notre Dame, the former teaching sisters at the St. John's School, and that was put into the chapel. And you can see some of the pictures up on the screen. Mayor McManus, would you please come and join me? Sister Rita, Sister Barbara, would you please come? We have the award that we would like to present, again, for their work for the St. John's Church. Sister Mary, or Sister Barbara and Sister Ruth, thank you. So, thank you. Would you like to say anything?
It is with a deep sense of honor and also gratitude for this committee to consider St. John the Baptist Church for this award. We have worked hard, and it actually was Father Martin who had the brainstorm to build that basement out into the Adoration Chapel as well as the conference area for the school. We worked hard. We asked many questions. We provide support and information that we could give. And also, the hospital worked very hard to provide the artifacts, the stained glass windows, pews, and so on for the chapel. So we say thank you for this award, and we shall pass it on to St. John's on the Baptist Church, Father Wiener. And we'll tell Father Martin about it too. Thank you.
All right, item L, presentation, Everyone Needs a Community Project, introduced by Josh Miller, Development Services Director, presented by Kathy Meyer.
Thank you, Mayor. I think the council is well aware that we are working towards trying to find creative solutions to our housing situation. One of those shortfalls is affordable housing. And Kathy Meyer is here to present on Everyone Needs a Community, which is a neighborhood community that deals or that looks to address those with developmental disabilities and encouraging intergenerational living in one community, and then people know each other. So Kathy, presented this concept to the Economic Development Board earlier this year, and she said, "Oh, it's good to see you," and realized I hadn't seen her since before COVID. So it's kind of, the world has changed a lot. So the EDB was very interested in this opportunity and supportive, and I encouraged her to come to present this to the council. She's going to do a little presentation about this project. So turn it over to Kathy. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Mayor and the council for us taking up some of your time. Yes, I will wear a mask, but at least I'll let you see what I look like for a moment. The masks protect you more than me, but it's one of those things that I wanted to do. Let's see. Okay. So anyway, this is Julie Solomonski. She's our treasurer on the board. And I can tell you a little bit about how secretary on the board. And I'll tell you a little bit of how we got started on this. I'm the mother of an almost 26-year-old with autism. And Julie is a retired special ed teacher. And there's a lot of things that just are not in place for adults with autism. And autism is different than a lot of other disabilities, and we'll get into that a little bit. So it's been a group of parents and friends of people with autism who felt that this was a good idea. And one of the things that got me started was when one of the churches in the area put on a prom for people with disabilities. And looking around, it was like we live, anything goes. And nobody got riled about, all the little accidents and things. And it was wonderful. And I thought, how do you grow this? And then I saw a model out in Massachusetts of a community where they brought seniors together, 55 and above, with families adopting children for foster care. Called Treehouse. And with that, they have behavior issues. They consider themselves a trauma-informed community. And we think that this is a great model for us to interpret for an autism-informed community.
We were able to apply these camps to a 2-day training. So we would learn how to duplicate this model.
So to tell you a little story about why autism is such a challenge, for most of us, having one of our children living independently with a job in the community is a huge target and a great success. For autism, it isn't always that clear that that's going to be the end of the trajectory. So I'll tell you a story about a young man with autism who lives in a neighboring county, and he'd been living independently for 3 years, working in the community, and living in housing designated for people with disabilities. Everything was going fine until he was arrested for cutting the cords on the vacuum cleaners in his apartment for the second time. Those of us who live with autism say, why did it happen the second time? If you understand the sensory issues these people have and the inability to self-advocate, you would, first time around, worked out something where you vacuumed when he wasn't home. But instead, it was wasted court time. Wasted valuable police time and procedures, wasted valuable court time. Ultimately, fortunately, the judge recognized he wasn't competent. This really wasn't appropriate to put him in jail, but he lost his place to live. And fortunately, his parents were still around and they found him a new place to live. Despite that, it's very traumatic for someone with autism to have that much change in their life. If his parents weren't in the picture, many of these people end up homeless. Social services doesn't take responsibility for finding them a place to live. So the question is, what if the apartment supervisor understood autism? What if the social workers understood autism? What if his neighbors understood autism? There would have been people who could advocate for him and work out a better solution than what happened. So this model, what if his parents were gone? It could have been a disaster. Autism is now estimated about 2.2% of adults. It is the most common developmental disability, more common than Down syndrome. Of our 18,000 plus people in Marshfield proper, that's approximately 360 adults with autism within the city limit. Now, what are we about? We're about healthy aging, a meaningful life, affordable housing, security, sustainability. People 55 and above also may face a lack of affordable housing, boredom, loneliness, and depression, isolation. If one thing COVID has taught us is how miserable isolation. It's also as hard on your health as 15 cigarettes a day. I'm a retired physician, so you'll be a little obsessive on some of these things. Financial stress. The median income of older persons in 2017 was $32,000 for males and $19,000 for females. And that's from the Administration for Community Living Profile of Older Americans, published in 2018. Loneliness. Many adults in assisted living situations are bored, lonely, and ultimately become depressed. The model in Massachusetts have been great outcomes for both children and seniors. They haven't really concentrated on seniors' health or studying that, but the seniors out there are delighted that they have a meaningful life and things that they can volunteer for right out their front door, just by being a good neighbor, and they are valued. And many of them are single, and they're 55 and above. Many of them retired. The children in this have done way better than those in the foster system. About 95% over the last 14 years have gone on to secondary school after high school, and which is unheard of in the foster system.
So the model we're replicating is Treehouse. They have experienced foster care. We were tweaking it for adults 55 and up and adults with autism.
Yeah, so we see.
We do have our nonprofit. We do have our 501c3. ENC is Everyone Needs a Community. It is an established nonprofit.
Yeah. So the parallels are between the adopted children and the needs of adults with autism. We see the 55 and above generation as an opportunity. What do seniors, those of us over 55, many people are looking to learn new things, to do something meaningful, and do it on their own terms. And this fits what a lot of people are looking for. We've spoken to a lot of different groups in town, particularly church groups, professional enrichment organizations, anybody who would listen to us. And it's been very well received, including also the Education Day at Martin Luther King Day for the Marathon County employees. And people have really received this idea well.
And Marshfield Public TV.
Yeah, Marshfield Public TV as well. So basically, there's better life, and they've shown also an improvement in health with doing things that are meaningful and volunteering. Our dream is to build an autism-informed community where everyone knows one another, and we facilitate community engagement and volunteer activities. The style treehouse is a cottage court model, which avoids the apartment building noise issues. Theirs is primarily single bedroom cottages in triplexes and then duplexes for the family situation. They also have a community center to facilitate the mission. We are a tax exempt organization. We're working with Wisconsin Housing Preservation Corps, which is a nonprofit developer. We're working hard at getting ideas and comments from the public to help us do this well. We have a site on a property. We've spoken to the owners. We worked with Josh and his group to identify an area that's big enough, and the owners of the property are open to the possibilities. So that's where things are right now. This is looking down the street. You can see right in the center of the picture is one of the duplexes, and they turn them at angles. It's really nicely designed as well, so that everybody has a front porch and a back patio that's somewhat private, despite it being, this is all entirely affordable housing. They don't have garages. That's where they saved a lot of their money. And it is New England, so they have snow, just like we do, maybe worse. And so this is one of the walking paths through. They have a playground. To the left is part of one of the triplexes. So you have a duplex on the right, and then one of the triplexes with the single bedroom cottages there on the left. Any questions? Yeah, that's right. Yeah. There'll be a percentage. There'll be a percentage of it that's affordable housing and a percentage that'll be market rate. It's pretty much the way a lot of the financing falls for doing this kind of thing.
We realize this is a huge project. We're taking one step at a time. We're learning a lot as we go along, talking to a lot of people. And pre-COVID, like Kathy said, we did a lot of presentations. Our passion is to make this become a reality, because oftentimes adults with autism end up in trouble, and they need a safe place to live, especially after parents are gone. And adults 55 and over, we've got a lot of retired school teachers in our community, and there's a lot of untapped skills and talent just waiting to be given and utilized.
All right, any questions? No?
Okay.
Well,
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Item M, request to approve resolution number 2020-34, the State Trust Fund loan for 2020 capital expenditures, presented by Ron Almond, Finance Director.
Thank you. As you can see, we've got quite a string of resolutions in the packet tonight. So what I want to do is just kind of recap a little bit about everything we have, including this resolution. Bill Costin from Ehlers is on for some additional comments, and then take any comments you have on any of the resolutions. So all the resolutions tonight are to finalize our 2020 approved borrowing. And again, we're borrowing a little later this year because we wanted the audit report in hand. So typically we'd start this process February 1st, hopefully have our money in April or May. So the difference is, and the reason for some of the resolutions at the last meeting is because a lot of our projects have started already. So we had to have a reimbursement resolution. So it was a little bit different than previous years, but the rates do appear good yet. The reason for the number of resolutions in the packet is for the bond borrowing. There's a separate resolution required for each different exempt purpose. So if you look at the statutes, each time there's a different exempt purpose, we need a resolution for each one. Another thing I wanted to mention, if you look at the pre-sale report, the bond repayment jumps around instead of just a flat amount each year repayment. It jumps around because what we do is we take into account all our other outstanding debt and we try to flatten it out so we have a stable tax rate. So, we've got 13 or 14 other debt issues outstanding. So if you see a large principal payment in the year, it's because other ones are lower that year. We're trying to smooth those off. So that's what we refer to as structuring the debt. We try to structure it in consideration with all the other outstanding items. It also does take into account this state trust fund loan. So those are just kind of some general comments. So why don't we take this item, and then I'll turn it over to Phil from Ehlers about some additional information on the pre-sale. So this resolution 2020-34 is for the state trust fund loan, 5-year life for the items listed in the packet, as approved in the 2020 budget. The items, again, didn't make the bond issuing, so we're financing separately. So I know we've been over this a few times, but glad to take any questions on the state trust fund loan or look for a motion.
So let's get a motion first, and then we'll
Okay.
open it up for question. So is there a motion to approve resolution number 2020-34? A motion by Mr. Butke, second by Mr. Peschel. Any discussion? Mr. Wagner.
Thank you, Your Honor. I talked to Ron a little earlier this week because a lot of what I'm seeing here is foreign to what I used to do or what we used to do on the council. I don't think we ever saw individual resolutions for each item to be included in the borrowing package. If we did, it was something that happened after I left, I believe. So that was something new to me. So I called Ron and talked to him about that. And apparently, there is something in the statutes, and I don't know if that's something that changed recently or not. But I think what that means is that every one of these resolutions is going to require a 2/3 vote. That's what I think is going to happen. So that's the most important thing. Now, the second thing, and I'll get on with it. I noticed that, again, the payback, it jumps all over. But the biggest thing that I worry about is the first payment on these bonds is going to be due March 1st of 2021, and it's going to be $800,000. And that's just the principal, not counting what the interest would be on that thing. So I went back and checked the 2020 budget, and in the debt service account that you had for that, we have, in that budget, we have three principal payments. One for $1,480,000, one for $1,685,355, and another one for $224. And then the interest is listed separately on that. Are those amounts still in the ballpark of what we're going to have without this additional $800,000? Or what will the additional $800,000 payment in March have to do to affect those other principal payments?
So, so what you're asking is the answer anything other than $800,000? I guess I'm not.
Well, I'm asking about what's changing so that we can afford $800,000 without a huge wallop. Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure we're going to avoid a huge wallop in the levy for the debt service either. But I mean, are we? What's being paid off or put down that we can afford that kind of payment in the next year?
Sure. I guess, I could look at each. So first of all, August 4th for finance and budget, we have the annual debt review. So we'll go over all this in debt, who owes what.
But we're voting on it tonight.
I know. I understand.
It sort of doesn't, Go ahead.
No. So the reason that $800,000 was in 2021 is because it's a low principal and interest year compared to the other ones. So if you look at our debt year by year in the pre-sale report and the detail pages, it's got the debt by year and the tax rate by year. So in the years where there's $100,000, we have a lot more debt, most likely because some of the older issues are getting towards the end and the payments are getting larger. And in 2021, we have a lower one. So again, it's all to smooth it.
And the other question I had that I talked about over the phone, I think I've got an answer to that. I think the interest rate, whatever that happens to be, whatever the market determines it to be, will be based on the face value of the loan. It won't vary. It will not, by changing the amount of the paybacks down to as little as $100,000 a year. I think there are going to be a couple of years where if we're talking about maybe even as low as 2%, where our interest payments are going to be greater than the principal payments on the loan. But that won't actually spread anything out. That won't cause a longer payout by lowering the principal paybacks in those years. That's not going to cost us additional years of interest, is it?
No, it's still a 20-year bond. And, collectively, again, what we're trying to do is that the principal and interest is smooth over the years. So individually for one debt issue, what you're saying might be true. We might have, if we have $100,000 premium or principal that we're paying off in 1 year, and that year, I haven't seen the debt schedules, it's theoretically possible that we might be paying a lot of interest on that one, but collectively, again, we're not.
And one last question.
Sure.
Before I bore everybody to death, but the thing is that, is this structured so that there's a separate accounting for each of the items that are being put into the bond issue? In other words, are you going to amortize the fire equipment first and the street equipment second or something like that? Or is it all just one lump sum and everything's thrown against it at one time?
So what happens is, so once we get the proceeds are attributed to the funds that are borrowing. Mostly these are general fund borrowings. I think there are some EMS. So the payback source will be levy. What was I going to say there?
The irrevocable tax. I got it. I've seen. I got it.
It's one single debt issue. We don't have a debt schedule for a fire truck or any individual item.
You're not. So there's no reason. The way that it's listed now it has nothing to do with any internal accounting we're going to do.
Nope. It's a bond issue. Once we receive the proceeds, it goes to the debt service fund. We make our annual payments and we pay down the debt at the macro level.
Okay, thank you. I think.
Thank you. Any further questions? Further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, please vote. Motion carries 10-0. Item N, request to approve resolution number 2020-36, authorizing general obligation bonds and an amount not to exceed $150,000 for fire department equipment, presented by Ron Almond, Finance Director.
Thank you, Bob. Before we get into the list of resolutions, I'm going to turn it over to Phil Costin from Ehlers to talk a little bit about where we're at with the pre-sale, and then we'll take it from there with the resolutions.
All right. Thank you, Ron. Appreciate it. I'm going to try to also maybe circle back to some of the questions that came up. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, first of all, I'd like to introduce myself. I think Dave Ferris from our office has been kind of the sole individual you have seen in the past. So I'm the other name that you see on all these documents. And behind the scenes, I am working with Dave on assisting to put a lot of this together. So I wanted to at least introduce myself. As Ron indicated, this is a 20-year bond issue, but in the packet that we have provided, I don't have your packet number, but on page 6 of our pre-sale report, we do provide a nice summary of the term of each of these issues or each of these projects. So we've structured the debt to make sure that we're looking and we're cognizant of the fact that not all of these purposes are going to last 20 years. So some of the maturity of the debt is a little bit earlier than later. The other thing I want to mention is that we always want to make sure that we're taking into account the city's rating as we look at your existing obligations, your current debt that you're looking to take on, and then anything that you have planned in the future. And so I want to circle back on one of the initial questions about the structure of this debt issue. If you recall, Dave Ferris walked you through a 5-year financial management plan, and part of that plan was a capital plan. So as we look at the full 5-year capital plan, we're not just structuring this debt issue along with existing debt today, but we're looking in the future as to what your capital needs are going to be over the next 5 years. And the reason that you're seeing some of the debt structure look the way it is we are accounting for future obligations being taken out by the city. And what we don't want to have happen are spikes in tax rates, as in valleys, spikes and valleys. We're trying to keep this level from year to year. So that's why you see the structure of the debt look like it does, to take into account the natural fall that you're seeing in your existing obligations, but at the same time looking in the future at your other capital needs that you will have as well. So the project, as again indicated, and why we have so many resolutions, is that state statute in Wisconsin. It's not federal statute, it's state statute where we actually have in Wisconsin more restrictions on the issuance of bonds. And so there was a question regarding why we have so many resolutions identified, and why is it broken out in these silos? That's state statute. Anytime you issue debt longer than 10 years, it's a bond issue. And when you issue bonds, you have to identify by purpose what the use of the funds are going to be for. So we have, you can see 6 different purposes here, including the fire department equipment, street improvements, swimming pool, UW system campus, airport projects, and water system improvements. So there's a lot of different purposes, and those purposes are identified specifically in the state statute as identified purposes that have to be broken out in a bond issue. So that's why you see so many resolutions by purpose, state statute. That isn't new. My speculation is you probably issued 10-year notes a great deal in the past. And when you do 10-year notes, it all kind of gets lumped together, and you don't have to have this breakout like we're showing for this issue. So our goal here, again, is to sell this on a competitive basis, meaning that we'll bring this to the market. We'll let all local, regional, and national underwriters and banks bid on this issue. We feel that's the greatest way to ensure that you have the best deal possible for the city. And we will make sure that as we go through that process, that we're in constant contact with the city so that you are fully aware of where we are with the number of bidders that are lining up. Last meeting, I think Dave provided a lot of information on the fact that this is a parameter sale. And in this document, the pre-sale report on page 3, we actually do list out the parameters. We have a maximum bid, a minimum bid, what we identify as a true interest cost, meaning it can't exceed that 3% threshold. And the fact that if all the parameters are met, it gets signed off on by either Ron and or by Steve Bard. But again, all documentation that you would normally see as a council, we will make sure you have, meaning we'll have a sale day report with all the pertinent information, and that'll be forwarded to you so you have that information available to you. The other reason we're looking at doing a parameter sale is that we are seeing a significant amount of bond issues in the marketplace these days, and it's a result of the rates that we are seeing in the market. So if it's authorized tonight, the plan is that we will actually have the parameter sale occur on August 31st. What we have found is that non-Mondays and Tuesdays, so Wednesdays and Thursdays, are less crowded in the sale calendar, not just Ehlers, not just the state, but nationally. And if we can stay off kind of a normal cycle of a Monday, Tuesday, we have the ability to hopefully generate more interest in the actual bond sale, which again, we think will lead to better results for the city. So the parameter sale would occur on August 31st. We've taken a lot of time to go through and do that, the financial impact analysis. And again, that's in the packet on page number 8. What we've provided here doesn't include that full 5-year spectrum of capital projects. It's looking at your existing obligation and this obligation. But we do have, and we have provided in the past, that 5-year look for the city so that you can see that our goal again is to make sure that we don't have these peaks and valleys with the mill rate for debt, that rather we're seeing kind of a stable tax rate for debt. And again, that's partly why we see the structure that we do. Finally, in the document, we also had on the last page have a 5-year trend in the bond market. And you can see this is probably our attempt to make you feel good about borrowing this much money, but the timing is perfect, and we hope it'll continue to be for an extended time. We actually are in a position right now where we're at a 20-year low in the bond market. We showed a true interest cost of 3%. We fully expect it'll be much lower than that if the current market conditions hold. And we expect that we won't see a great deal of movement over the next month to a month and a half, just because unless we see some new numbers come out on the pandemic or such. But the financial market has baked a lot of that information, that news in already, and we don't expect that we're going to see a great deal of movement in rates over the last month. So we fully expect to get great results there. So the resolutions, again, which would be M, N, O, P, Q, R, and S, essentially those provide those breakouts by statute, that is by purpose. P then is a resolution directing publication of notice to the electors, which is a requirement anytime you do a bond issue. And then U brings this all back together and really says you're establishing the parameters for the sale of a not to exceed $6,295,000 corporate purpose bond, which then gives us authorization to continue on with this process and to make sure that we are able to bring this to the marketplace in the schedule that we have identified. So there are a lot of resolutions, and I know it looks a little bit odd, but that's the purpose, and that's the reason we have so many resolutions in your packet tonight.
Anything further, Ron?
Nope.
Nope. With that, then, we'll look for a motion to approve resolution number 2020-36, a motion by Mr. Peschel. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Fire. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote. That motion carries 10-0. Item O, request to approve resolution number 2020-37, authorizing general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $3,005,000 for street improvement projects, presented by Ron Almond, Finance Director.
Okay. Do you want me to just read through these in order? I don't think we have any new information on these. So resolution 2020-36, $150,000 for the exempt purpose of fire department equipment. Look for a motion.
We just did that one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're on to 2020-37.
I'm sorry. 2020-37, $3 million for street improvement projects, exempt purpose. I'd look for a motion on that one also.
Motion to approve by Mr. Fisher, a second by Mr. Fire. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote. That motion carries 10-0. Item P, request to approve resolution number 2020-38, authorizing general obligation bonds on an amount not to exceed $3,075,000 for swimming pool projects, presented by Ron Almond.
Again, no new information here for the swimming pool portion. And your question might be, why is it more than $3 million? Because there are some debt issuance costs allocated at a kind of a not to exceed. If you heard Dave and Phil, we hope that we'll sell these at a discount and it'll bring it back to $3 million. So we'll look for a resolution or look for a motion to approve 2020-38.
Thank you. And there is a motion by Mr. Witzel, second by Mr. Fire. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote. That motion carries 10-0. Item Q, request to approve resolution number 2020-39, authorizing general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $10,000 for the UW System College campuses, presented by Ron Almond.
And this one, another point of note is the bonds sell in $5,000 increments. So, and this one actually went a little bit down from what's presented, but nothing new to add on this one either. Look for a motion to approve 2020-39.
There is a motion by Mr. Hendler, a second by Mr. Wagner. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote. That motion carries 10-0. Item R, request to approve resolution number 2020-40, authorizing general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $20,000 for airport projects, presented by Ron Almond.
Okay. No additional information here. Look for a motion to approve 2020-40.
There is a motion by Mrs. Spiros, a second by Mr. Wagner. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote. Mr. Wagner? Thank you. That motion carries. Let's see. Item S, request to approve resolution number 2020-41, authorizing general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $35,000 for water system improvements, presented by Ron Almond.
Nothing new here. Look for a motion to approve 2020-41.
And there is a motion by Mr. Butke, a second by Mr. Rosendich. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote. That motion carries 10-0. Item T, request to approve resolution number 2020-42, directing publication of notice to electors relating to bond issues, presented by Ron Almond.
Look for a motion to approve 2020-42 to publish notice to electors.
And there's a motion by Mr. Peschel and a second by Mrs. Spiros. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote. Motion carries 10-0. Item U, request to approve resolution number 2020-43, establishing parameters for the sale of not to exceed 6.295 million general obligation corporate purpose bonds, series 2020B, presented by Ron Almond.
One thing I'd like to add to this, if you listen to what Ehlers is saying about the parameter sale, I think it's a great idea. I mean, we get the same information, but it really kind of frees them up to kind of hunt for a better rate. So we'll look for approval here, but I think it's something we definitely should consider on all our future debt issues. So you'll probably see this again. Any questions or a motion to approve 20-2043?
Thank you. There is a motion to approve by Mr. Fisher, a second by Mr. Fire. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote. And motion carries 10-0. Thank you very much, Ron.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
Item V, request to approve extension of a conditional use permit, resolution number 2019-30 for the Faber Group Development located at 3007 West Mann Street, presented by Josh Miller, Development Services Director.
Thank you, Mayor. The municipal code allows or requires basically conditional use permits to be initiated within 12 months of approval and completed within 2 years of approval. It does give the council discretion to extend that time frame if needed, or it can be extended as part of the condition. Mr. Faber had requested a group development back in July of last year as part of a conditional use request. That was to put 4 duplexes on it was originally 3 parcels on Mann Street. He has since combined those parcels with a certified survey map. So basically, he's requesting to extend that time frame for another year, which would, he's real close to getting the building permits in, but he was worried he would miss that deadline. So he'd asked for an extension and is requesting an extension for a year to initiate and then a year to complete. So the deadline to complete would be July 22nd of 2022. Staff would recommend approval of extension.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the requested extension of time? A motion by Mr. Fisher, second by Mr. Witzel. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote. Mr. Hendler? Here we go. Thank you. Motion carries 10-0. Item W, second reading of amended ordinance number 1437, amending municipal code to update the Housing Rehabilitation Committee duties, presented by Josh Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. We do have some minor changes that have taken place since the first reading. That's why this is an amended ordinance. The changes are they're not substantive. They're just clarification points. And so really the whole purpose for amending this ordinance is to modify the duties of the Housing Repair Committee or Housing Rehabilitation Committee to more align them with what is required by the Department of Administration now and what is in their handbook that was adopted earlier this year. So basically, they're really looking to change. We just added some minor language on section F, which was oversee the CDBG program compliance. In section old G, now new C would be switching out the word of, that it did say for, but now listing of. Section 8, reviewing review of appeals submitted by the applicants of the program, and then scheduling meetings was in the last regulation or duty was what was proposed to change. So ultimately, the committee doesn't meet very often. It's basically as needed, and really the major purpose of this change is the committee used to review applications that were submitted by the CDBG program. But because a lot of it is low-income housing based or income-based and it's dealing with low-income housing, they're not even really allowed to know a lot about the project as far as who's applying and where it is. So it's very limited. The rules have since changed so that basically if you're applicable or if you're eligible, you would be awarded the funds if you can meet the qualifications. So reviewing these programs or these specific projects didn't really make a lot of sense. And so most communities have removed that. And so that's the major change of this ordinance. We did have a first reading of this at the last council meeting, and this would be the second reading, and staff would recommend approval.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the amended ordinance number 1437? A motion by Mr. Hendler, a second by Mr. Butke. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote. Motion carries 10-0. Item X, first reading of ordinance number 1438, rezoning property located at 913 West North Street, parcel 33-02105 from SR4 Single Family Residential to TR6 Two Family Residential, presented by Josh Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. The proposed rezoning is to go from SR4, which is single family, to TR6 Two Family. This would allow the applicant to put a duplex on that house or on that site. There's currently a house on that site, and I believe the plan would be to remove that at some point and then rebuild a new duplex. The TR6 zoning does allow 1 and 2 families. So basically, when you're approving a zoning, you're looking at what are the possible uses for that site. And so going from single family to TR6 would allow for them to put a duplex on in addition to the other permitted uses. The site is on the north side of North Street. It's about 90.92 acres. So it's a large single family site. It's about 3 times deep as it is wide. Those are some of the longer, deeper lots up along the cemetery near the medical complex. The east side is zoned, most of the properties are zoned SR4 surrounding the property, but on the kitty corner to the southeast is a TR6 zoning and I believe it's a condo, 2-unit condo. There are many other duplexes in the neighborhood within 500 feet of this property. In the comprehensive plan, this area is for medium density residential, which would allow for the 1 and 2 family homes. Prior zoning was zoned R4, which was low 1 and 2 family density, which did allow 2 families. So in the 2013 zoning, we did make changes to the zoning code, limiting duplexes to only TR6, and this didn't get zoned TR6 at the time. So there was a public hearing at the last Plan Commission meeting last week. There was no public comment. Plan Commission did recommend approval. This is the first reading, so there's no recommended action at this time, but I'd be happy to address any questions.
Any questions for Josh? Seeing none. All right, thank you, Josh. We'll go on to item Y, first reading of ordinance number 1439. Rezoning property located in the 2900 block between Pop Avenue and West Veterans Parkway, parcel 250-2602-362-9983 from CMU Community Mixed Use to SR4 Single Family Residential, presented by Josh Miller.
Thank you. This property is located in the 2900 block of West Veterans Parkway. It's kind of an odd shape. There's a triangle piece cut out of it facing west. And so it's been zoned commercial a long time, and it's been vacant land. It's sandwiched between some single family residential to the west and a 5-plex apartment complex to the east. And to the north, there's undeveloped forest land, and to the south, it's zoned industrial, but it's also forest land across the railroad tracks. This lot is about 1.2 acres in size. The developer, the applicant, is interested in rezoning it to single family so they can develop 2, possibly 3 lots. And as we talked about in the housing study, we need additional lots. So this would meet address some of the needs in the housing study. Prior to the rezoning in 2013, this property was zoned B4, which is our general commercial. It wouldn't have access to Veterans Parkway, so it's really not an ideal commercial location. It's without that access, it has very limited appeal for a commercial development. You'd have to drive all the way around to Pop Avenue to get to it. And so, you'd think a lot of these properties along Veterans would have commercial appeal because it's a heavily trafficked area, but really with the access limitation, it does have a very limited appeal for commercial. This property is identified in the new neighborhood mixed use in the comprehensive plan, which does encourage at least 50% of that to be single family residential. Would also encourage a mix of commercial and other housing, but again, with the limited appeal of commercial, it seems supportive to have it as residential, single family. Again, the primary uses are going to be single family. You wouldn't allow two family on this. A public hearing was held last week at the July Plan Commission meeting where there was no public comment made. Again, this is a first reading, so no recommendation at this time, but I'd be happy to address any questions.
Any questions for Josh? Mr. Witzel?
Thank you. Why is there limited access to veterans?
It's a DOT thing, I think.
Because it looks like every property, both the one that's to the southeast as well as the half dozen or dozen to the northwest all have access.
That is because those had access prior to the Highway 13 project. Any new points have no access if they have an alternative access, and that's to reduce the number of traffic crashes on Highway 13. It was all done as part of a safety improvement project.
So the existing ones were grandfathered in?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Any further questions? All right, thank you, Josh. We're going to item Z. First reading of ordinance number 1440, rezoning property located at 1805 South Rhodes Avenue, northern half of parcel 33-03530 from GI General Industrial to CMU Community Mixed Use, presented by Josh Miller.
Thank you. This property is on the south end of town. This is for the new aquatic center. That whole parcel right now is on GI, and in order to accommodate for the pool, we could have done a couple different things, but it made more sense to rezone it to community mixed use. Community mixed use is suitable in this area. It's a transitional mixed use in the future land use map in the comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plan has a number of supporting goals and objectives in there that support this area being used for the pool. So it makes sense to rezone it. The original parcel is included with the Marshfield Utilities building. It took us a while to come up with a line for where that property should be split. And so that's why this didn't come before the council earlier. Once the pool was fast-tracked, we knew we needed to get this addressed, and we worked with the utility department on those. We feel that this is a good line for this division. It's going to give us enough room for the pool and for their project. So if it has to change, they're going to be reviewing their projects soon and finalizing the plans for that, hopefully. If things have to change, we can always come back and revisit it, but we feel like to get the pool going, we wanted to get this done in time. This had kind of a goofy zoning back in prior to 2013. It had a C for conservancy and a M3 for general industrial district, and now it's just general industrial. So certified survey map was approved, I believe, at the last Board of Public Works meeting to split this off, and it's a little over, I think, 5 acres for the pool site. And I think there's also supporting documentation in the comprehensive outdoor recreation plan to have the pool site here. This project was reviewed as part of the state statute 6223, paragraph 5, which requires any municipal public building to be reviewed for architectural standards and location. That review took place last December. And so the council did accept that. I think we all know that the money has been raised for the pool, and so we're moving forward with that. And so because of the timing of this, staff has actually asked to suspend the rules and approve this rezoning tonight. So that can be tied in with the bid approvals and go forward and get started on it.
Thank you. Is there a motion to suspend the rules and approve ordinance number 1440? Motion by Mr. Witzel, second by Mr. Peschel. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote. That motion carries 10-0. Now, is there a motion to approve ordinance number 1440? Motion by Mr. Witzel, second by Mr. Fire. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote. That motion carries 10-0. Item AA, first reading of ordinance number 1441 and amending chapter 18 of the Marshfield Municipal Code, section 18-633, 4, and 5, presented by Josh Miller.
Thank you, Mayor, and this is my last item for the evening. Last month in June, we reviewed a conditional use request for a junkyard salvage yard use on the east side in the industrial park. one of the things that they wanted to do were to do auto salvage operations. And one of those requirements for them to be able to do that are to handle what's called hazardous materials, which is usually like coolant, old oil, fuel, things like that. When we were looking at our municipal code, we realized that there was a restriction prohibiting handling hazardous material, which would basically limit a use that was allowed by code in the zoning code. So we found that to be an inconsistency with the code, and so we went back and said, well, they applied for their conditional use, but one of the conditions was that they would have to, the code would have to be amended for them to be able to operate. So the conditional use was approved, but that's really a separate issue. Ultimately, we wanted to fix our code so we didn't have inconsistencies between saying you can do an auto salvage dealer, but then saying, but you can't because you can't actually handle hazardous materials. And hazardous materials like that can be handled by a repair shop, a vehicle repair shop, or other types of facilities like that are less intensive than in an industrial area. So it doesn't make sense to restrict them. And all of the sections of code that we were proposing to change would be all conditional uses in the general industrial district. So if there was a concern or an issue with one of those uses, they'd still have to come forward as a conditional use. So staff is proposing to change what is currently the language that states operations shall not involve the on-site holding, storage, or disposal of hazardous materials as defined by state statutes in any manner. One of the challenges with that is you can't just look up hazardous materials in state statutes and find a list of hazardous materials. They're all over the place. So it's really difficult and cumbersome to try to identify what is all considered hazardous materials. So proposing to change it to any on-site holding, storage, or disposal of hazardous materials shall meet all local, state, and federal requirements, and the business shall acquire and maintain all necessary permits, licenses, and registration. One of the things that got brought up at the Plan Commission meeting last week was whether signage is required or stickers required to identify that they're using hazardous materials. So I spoke to Deputy Chief Fletty with the fire department. He said, absolutely, they do. They require those things in the business to inform that they are handling those materials. So we didn't feel it was necessary to incorporate in this code, but if we want, when we come back at another date, since it's already required, we don't have to have duplicate requirements. So, but we could at a future date. So we did have a public hearing at the Plan Commission meeting last week, and there was no public comment. Then again, this was the first reading, but I'd be happy to address any.
Thank you. Any questions for Josh? Doesn't look like it. Thank you very much, Josh. Item BB, request to approve the appointment of Danielle Nystrom, 409 West 7th Street, to fill a vacant position on the Committee on Aging for a term ending in 2022, presented by myself. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Mr. Witzel, second by Mr. Fire. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote. Motion carries 10-0. Item CC, any requested items for future agendas? See, Mr. Bucky?
Yes, I've had a couple of requests, again, for ordinance to allow chickens. So I would like for that to be brought back. We're going to have to go through the ordinance control, I would imagine, and see what other communities are doing and vote on it and put it to a rest one way or the other. Thank you.
Bring the chickens back. Any other items for future agendas? Seeing none, motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Witzel, or a second? And second by Mr. Bargender. Thank you all very much. We're adjourned.